Today's Dancer Origin Story interviewee is the lovely Maria. We met so long ago. It must have been, I don't know, 2010, 2012, something like that, in California at Cairo Caravan. Maria is a first generation American from Egyptian parents. And I'm just so thrilled to share with you her journey and have this discussion about things that are important to her in this dance and um, just all the trajectory of her learning so far. So Maria, oh, I forgot to tell you, we I don't have a webinar, so one of us or the other will appear on screen as we talk. So just for
No
your planning
problem.
purposes. All
Great.
right. So welcome. I'm so
Thank you
happy.
so
Yeah.
much. It's so good to one reconnect. It's been so long, since Los Angeles, and so much has changed since we first met. So I'm really excited. One, just to reconnect and kind of talk about the my trajectory since we first met. So yeah, thank you so much
Fantastic.
for having me. Thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. Um, I'd love to know, what is one of your earliest or maybe your first memories of dance?
Yeah, so my like you mentioned, so I'm first generation American. My parents are immigrants from Egypt. So I was born in the U.S. Um, and the Egyptian culture, Middle Eastern culture, is a very dance oriented, especially in social settings. So um, weddings, birthdays. So that was kind of like where I started seeing dance. Um, Kind of happened first in the social setting when I was really young. Um, and even Egyptian music, like my parents used to watch some of the older films, especially when I was really young. They were really homesick, kind of thing. Like this is like my earliest memories, like is actually hearing like the classic Kulthum music. Like my dad like had cassettes of it, like we're driving to school and he would play it all the time. My mom would always watch the Arabic films, where like you can hear hear the orchestra play her music. So it was really just like something that was I was just always exposed to, and it's like some of my first memories of is the especially Kulthum, but also the dance itself, just kind of absorbing it and seeing it happen um, at social settings.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, the cassette days were pretty pretty wild.
Cassette tapes. Oh,
I
hooray.
know he had cassette tapes of Olma Kulthum, and we were, like I grew up speaking Arabic, but you're like 6 years old, so we could never say Kulthum, but we like knew who it was, kind of thing. We just like couldn't pronounce her name in Arabic, but like my dad knew. We're like, oh, put her on, kind of thing. We're just being kids. And he would always play it like on the drive to like school or going home or something like that. So it was definitely for them a very like, especially being an immigrant for them. They were the first actually to leave Egypt from my entire family. No one else has
Wow.
done it. This was like in the 80s. So, they like I kind of I definitely see like for them how difficult that something like that is, like you leave your home country and there's no family in the other country, so they were definitely homesick, and these were like kind of the things that like the music, the movies that really connected them back home for them. And then it just kind of like I just absorbed it through like osmosis or something. So,
Absolutely. Did they come to an Egyptian community or any other Arabic speaking community?
yeah, so actually, so my parents came to Cleveland, Ohio, and I guess during that time, from at least conversations with my parents, there were other immigrants from Egypt coming around that time in like the 80s. So Cleveland actually has a very, a pretty good Arabic speaking community. So, like, for example, I'm Coptic Orthodox, which is like the Christian population of Egypt. we have like two churches there already. It's just like
Wow.
growing and growing and growing. Like when I was a kid, we only just had the one, and almost everybody's Egyptian. But then when the 2011 Egyptian revolution happened, there was
Mm.
this other wave of immigrants coming because people wanted to leave Egypt. Like you're not sure of the state of the country. So it just got bigger, at least for my direct circle. So I think now, like the community that exists now is definitely much bigger than when I was a kid. And it's not just Egyptians. Like there's just so many Arabic speaking populations, and I think we Cleveland is very nice and diverse, not just for Arab speakers, but also like Spanish speakers, which uh, which really helped, like my parents feel like more at home, because they're like, okay, we're not like totally alone. There's other immigrants who are going through similar struggles as we are. They're the first to leave, and I think so it was almost like family, even if you're not blood related, kind of thing.
That makes
Yeah,
sense. That
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah. Um, I'd love to hear a little bit about where they're from. Did you get to visit as a child? Did you visit as an adult?
yeah,
Egypt is a big place, so.
yeah, yeah. So it's always funny because when I say that my family's from Egypt, people assume Cairo, pyramids, like yeah, which is not, my family's not from Cairo. They're actually from Asyut, which is in Upper Egypt, and it's like right along the Nile River. And so, and Asyut, and along with some other cities like Luxor and Aswan being part of Upper Egypt, it's also called the Sayed region or Saidi, which is, and we could definitely talk about this later, which is where Raqs al Asaya, the dance of the cane or the stick, is really associated with Osyut and Upper Egypt. So that's kind of like in terms of folklore, that's literally the dance of like my family's home city. So
Wow.
yeah, so in terms of folklore, like it's my favorite, absolutely. Mostly because it's like, well, that's what my family lineage is. So we're all about this dance. So but yeah, I've definitely visited a few. Yeah, when I go to Egypt, I'm not really a tourist
Mm.
there, and I think that's like kind of the little bit of difference is like, I mean, I'll do touristy things like, okay, yes, I saw the pyramids, yes, I went to Cairo, I've been to Giza, Alexandria, things like that. But 9 out of 10, I'm in the village with my family in Asyut, and we're just like being family kind of thing. And I think actually that is a good experience to have because um, you see the variety. Like, Egypt relies a lot on tourism, and so Cairo is a different world than if you go into Upper Egypt, if you go into like Asyut and things like that. So I think it's good to remember also, lots of dancers, traveling to Cairo, for a lot of these festivals that are happening that are just like popping up literally everywhere. It feels like every weekend now there's a festival in Egypt. And but there's so, just like any country, even the United States, regionally there's so much variety, and Cairo is not representative of the entire country, kind of thing. So I like that I have kind of those perspectives. Is like, okay, like, this is what the daily life is of someone in Asyut, but this is like kind of also what a tourist can experience in Cairo, something
Mm.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious too about sort of the way you might experience dance among the community here or where you grew up versus how you might experience it in the village.
Yeah. So when I and I so I now teach primarily folklore dances. I actually started off in the belly dance world, and that's how kind of we met. where I focus a lot on belly dance. But now I've transitioned and really become more vocal and open with folkloric dances, not just for Egypt, but also just like North Africa, Middle East. Some of my dance training actually took me through like Persian dance and also Bhangra from Punjab, northern India. So I just love folkloric dance in general. Um, and I think so. One of the things that I kind of bring up when I teach, so first, I guess when I teach like a workshop, let's say it's like 2 hours, I always give a lecture in the beginning, always. Um, so you're going to hear me talk like for at least like 20, 30 minutes, um, kind of talk about, the dance itself, its origin, the people associated with the dance, and kind of give you that contextual framework. So you kind of step into something and you kind of know what you're doing a bit more that for, and I'm going to use Roxella Saya as an example. One thing that I've really seen in Egypt is, and even through my parents too, there's a lot of pride in literally everything you do. So like the dance or even the asaya itself, like to us, it could just be a stick. It's just a stick. It's just a cane. But to them, it's so much more. It's like literally a piece of them. So I literally and one thing that I study with Ahmed Rafat, who is an Egyptian dance instructor and teacher based in Egypt. And one thing that he said in one of his videos, and I love that he said this, is he's like, you respect the Asaya. And I was
Mm.
just like, yeah, that's it. That's it.
That
Like it's
resonates
like,
like so much with you.
yeah, yeah,
Nice.
because it's like literally there's so much pride in the way it's made, and like even the wood that comes from it and things like that. And it's like this is like a piece of us kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of pride, um, and the other piece too that I kind of talk about for dancers is to remember that a lot of the folkloric dances, they're inspired, like what we see on the stage is inspired by what occurs at home. So
Mm.
like there's even like there's interviews and articles with Mahmoud Reda himself saying like my core saying like this is Reda's exact words, my choreographies are inspired by folklore. So like he when Reda Troupe was starting and as successful as it came, like you take a look at like what's happening in reality and then you put it on a stage like and make it performance theatrical, exaggeration in some way, to bring it to that performance level. But I always tell dancers, remember it started in the home.
Mm.
So I think the best videos, honestly, I mean, yeah, you could watch the like, Mahmoud Reda performances, but my favorite, honestly, are just like those YouTube videos where there's literally someone with their cell phone, just like videotaping like their cousin or their grandpa just going nuts, Because to me, that's like that's home, and that's more. I don't want. I don't want to say authentic, but that's more raw, than when it's nicely packaged and put onto the stage.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Yeah. It's what you see, it's what you experience, it's what resonates with you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
Thank you.
So, what led to you becoming serious about your dance studies on a more, uh, you know, professional trajectory? I know
Yeah.
we all talk about professional in different ways. So, what that means to you?
Right. So I think and I think I kind of had two phases of my life in a way. One I would say is the belly dance phase, and the other I would say is the folklore phase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I love that you're
belly,
differentiating. So many times we
yes,
lump these into one as Americans who talk about dance. So I really love that you're making this differentiation and definitely
oh,
more about that,
definitely.
please.
Yes, of course. So I started becoming serious about belly dance. And I guess when I define serious, I mean, one, you're a student for life, and I firmly believe that.
Yeah.
Nobody is ever going to know anything, including natives. And you know, I like, and I like, I am not the authority just because I'm Egyptian, like, and I think that that is something important to remember is like, we are all human and, culture is dynamic, it changes. So, what is popular in Cairo now, give it a year or two, like,
Yes.
it's probably going to change, and so I think when I became really serious about like my belly dance training, like going to workshops, like we were like traveling, especially for workshops,
Wow.
like and these bigger conferences, like I would say that was maybe like in my early to late 20s, and so that was like 15 years ago, roughly 10 years ago or so, and then and I'm very open about this piece. Unfortunately, um because so I'm first generation American, which and this is the story of a lot of children of immigrants, not just Egyptian, but you are a lot of first generation and children of immigrants have identity troubles, or like go through an identity crisis, however you want to package it, because you're really stuck between two cultures and they can be very different. So, like for me, I would go to school and you're like raised to be American. And, even like you kind of see it a little bit in some movies. Like actually, my Big Fat Greek Wedding to me, when like Tula, she's like, I just want to eat like a turkey sandwich at lunch. I don't want to eat moussaka, you know. And sometimes you're even those little things, you're like, I just want to be normal, I want to be like everybody else. And but then you go home and you're Egyptian, and which is a different set of rules and expectations. And for dance and Egyptians, and I think I'm just going to use Egyptians, it could be very much true with anyone from an Arabic speaking country, there is a love hate relationship with belly dance. And we love it. We love seeing it. We love, you're probably going to have a belly dancer at a wedding, like people go to shows, like this, Samia Gamal, like was like iconic in so many ways, but not your daughter. Never. Also, in a professional setting, on a stage, and then there's for money, and then there's this idea of also you're just like, getting as a parent, you're probably getting horrified too of like, oh my God, her stomach is showing. Like she has like a skirt with like two slits all the way up to her hip, and then like, people are throwing money at you, it's just like, I mean, I could see from a conservative point of view why this could be like absolutely horrifying, you know, for a parent. And the other thing is like, there's a lot of, at least for me, like there's a lot of, other than stigma, and, you know, with a daughter being a belly dancer, there, one thing that I will say that is very different about Egyptian culture and American culture, the way I see American culture, it's very individualistic.
Hmm.
Like I've had people tell me like, well, you're an American, you could do whatever you want. Like this is America. That's not true in an Egyptian household. In an Egyptian household, the community is what matters. The family is the core, So, and, whether someone agrees with this or not, like even I've seen it in my generation, people will marry somebody that their parents set them up with. They'll go into a career that they might not want to do. But, sometimes you're just like, you know what? It makes them happy. I don't want to argue. I don't want to fight. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And yes, it is very unfortunate. And I will say that, that can 100% wear you down. And this is something I've experienced both in my, day job and also my dance is, when you if what you love is different than the expectation,
Yeah.
do you fight for it? And understand that if you do fight for it, you're going to be fighting for a very long time, like probably your whole life. And I think that is something that maybe is not seen a lot in the American community because we do have this individualism of, you know, oh, you could cut off your parents and never talk to them anymore. It's like totally normal. Like that's like an atrocity, like in Egypt, to do something like that. You always honor the family, and you don't bring shame to the family in any way. Because like even when I'm introduced to somebody, they don't introduce me as Maria. They don't introduce me by my first name. They're like, oh, Heya Bint something. So Bint is daughter. So she is the daughter of this man. So you're already associated with the personality and the character of your family. It's
Hmm.
almost like you don't really have, not that you don't have an identity, but it's like you're very tied to the family.
Primary
So,
identity, family first.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, family first, which is a very hard thing to come to terms with and to like protect your own peace. Growing up in the US and really trying to figure out like who are you, like where do you align, what is going to make you happy,
Mhm.
and like, you know in it's a very hard thing to explain. I think you almost have to live it to kind of fully understand.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So but yeah, so I think so that was my belly dance phase, long story short,
Yeah.
or a long story actually. Um, and dance was something that was a fight for me. It was
Mhm.
something I was fighting for, and I stepped away for many years, many, many years. It just, I got tired, and
Fair.
and it was a, what, I'm gonna take a back seat. This is causing too much on me. Um, and maybe this is not a battle I want to fight anymore. Maybe I'll give up dance. Maybe I'll just never dance again. And that was something that was true for a long time, actually. Like
Wow.
maybe 5 years. I didn't
Mm.
dance.
Hmm.
I sold all my costumes except for like a few of them. That's it. There's those few costumes that they're like one day, one day, one day. Just like don't get rid of me. And
Yes.
there were like maybe two of them that I'm like, okay, no, you can't do it. You can't do it. Like, you can't get rid of these two. And then I think this is very recent, probably this past year or so, my folklore phase started. And um, for that, I became very serious about it because one, it's a deficit in a lot many dance communities that I've experienced. Definitely in Ohio, we have, Roxa Lasaya, but like if I like talk about something called like Simsamea and Benbuti, a
Hmm.
lot of people might not know what I'm talking about. Or like if I say Nubian, they might have seen it, but nobody knows how to do it, kind of thing. So it actually all started because there was a Persian wedding that was happening in Columbus, and they wanted Bandari. It was a folkloric dance from Iran.
Hmm.
And I know Bandari, but I don't perform.
Ooh.
So like I've been like kind of this hidden person in the belly dance community that's like, oh, she knows it, but she's not a gigging dancer. So what do we do? So I actually agreed to do this gig. The gig was given primarily to a girlfriend who is a belly dancer, and we did it together. We practiced, choreography. We did the wedding. It was wonderful. Happy bride, everything. It was fantastic. And that was kind of like, I miss this so much.
Mm.
Like, I will not lie. Before we went on stage or like in the reception, I was crying. Mostly, one, because I was scared, because I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this again. When I was scared, and then later I was just like, this is probably the bravest thing you've done in a long time.
Yeah.
And it just was like, I miss this so much. And people clearly are asking about it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it felt like it was a gap I could fill. And it was like, you know what? I'm going to fight for this one. So consequences be damned.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, you had that break and you were able to really experience how much this means to you. Doing it again, that's yeah. Yeah, that's huge. So um you noticed the lack of the presence of people who know these types of dances in your community, and you noticed your own real deep desire to be doing them. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I
And
think
so,
for me,
yes.
oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, go right ahead.
Oh no, I think one thing that really I wanted to also kind of do something a little different.
Mm,
And I think that sometimes we can see a lot of veil. We can see a lot of drum solos. In terms of folklore, there's not much. I mean, I think we're improving in that. And when I say we, I'm just saying like what I'm seeing. So this is not a general blanket statement for all belly dance communities. Um, like there's workshops with like I'm gonna like use an example, Lebanese Simon, like he'll come and he can do workshops that cater for the Oriental, but he can also teach Depki, and I think there's becoming more of an interest in like, hey, I want to learn something different, you know.
mm-hmm.
So I think that is starting to happen, and that's kind of like where I want to go with things is, like, okay, if the interest is there, let's like tease it out a little
Yeah,
bit more. And, you know, but also at the same time, you know, these dances belong to a people. And for me, it's really important to not just dance, but like also understand like the where, why, how, and all of that to the best of your abilities. Again, we're not going to know everything. There's just so much out
of
there.
course.
And I think like, but to like, I think increasing that exposure is very important.
Yes. So you let me see. You obviously are very much familiar with Asaya, with Raqs Asaya, with a Saidi, what belly dancers tend to think of Saidi style, and um, and others, Bandari, not
Mhm.
Saidi.
No, no, no,
Tell me a little
definitely.
more about that, because I definitely want to get more into Saidi and kind of your perspectives on that and everything. But I'm curious about, Bandari was your return to,
It was,
um, yes,
yeah, it was. So I learned Bandari, actually
Bandari.
when I was just always interested in learning different things.
Cool.
And I never really wanted to wedge myself. So even when I was in belly dance world, um, I mean, you could break it down in a way. It's like, oh, I want to learn, you know, how to dance with veil. I want to learn how to do a drum solo. Like you could be a belly dancer and not do those things if
Yeah,
you wish,
so true.
but yeah, and or but I was very much like, there's so much more to the world. Like, there's just so much more out there, you know? So, and for me, it was also like, what's what's out there, and two, what's hidden in a
Mm.
way. So one thing that I learned a lot, so I actually don't know how Persian dance came about for me. I actually don't know how it happened.
I love that.
Maybe it was a nearby workshop years ago. It just so happened that someone who does Persian dance was in the area. Um, but it was like, oh, this is cool and this is different. I kind of want to learn. I've only seen it in videos, and um, I I took the workshops, and I'm like, this is so much fun. This is amazing. Like this reminds me of like just like it's just energetic and fun.
Mm.
And Bandari has a lot of like upper body movements. Like most, it's not really hip driven like we think of like belly dance isolation, hip driven. Um, you know, there's lots of upper body like shoulder shrugging and like chest shimmies. It's much less isolated. I feel like it's more raw than about precision, I would
Hmm.
say. And lots of hair whipping as well, which is always fun, you know. And I think there's just, it's, to me, I'm like, this is just different. And I found it to be fun. And it was a similar, um, it had similar qualities to belly dance in a way that it was just like I was drawn to it. But there's something about folkloric dance for me, it just feels more connected to people,
Hmm.
which I
Hmm.
think makes me love it even more.
Hmm.
Um,
Makes
and
sense.
another dance style, and I'm still like learning a lot from this one, is Bhangra. So Bhangra is folkloric dance from Punjab, which is northern India. And I was first exposed to Bhangra in college. A lot of universities have Bhangra dance teams, and which are so cool to watch. They're like competitive level. Like I think Cornell University, actually, they have an amazing performance. They were actually on America's Got Talent, and it was just so cool to see them. And they're college kids, you know? And so a lot of my friends were Indian or Punjabi, and they were on the Bhangra team. And I would
Wow.
go to their performances, you know, I would like go to their shows a lot. Um, and then I started learning myself. And because like I had a lot of friends who were Indian invite me to their weddings, and you know I wanted to like at least learn something to be able to socially dance. And then I just started taking classes, and it was such a challenge. It is a challenge still. It's a very different energy that you need, much more cardio driven. There's lots of jumping, you know, like you got to bring it to the stage. There's no, to me, like there's no sugarcoating the happiness. Like you have to like bring it 110%. Um, and it's just like, it's almost like, I don't know, it's just like very like infectious, I would say. Like it just really draws people in, and there's a lot of joy associated. So I think and again, like with Bhangra, it just felt like, okay, this is Punjab. This is Punjab. This is associated with these people right here in Punjab. And it made me feel like there was just a stronger connection there between the dance and the people of origin.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
yeah,
And that makes perfect sense. I mean, Rex Sharkey being, or belly dance being like the stage version and the
yeah.
not what you do in your living room.
Right,
Right? So when you
exactly.
have the
Yeah,
folkloric dance, yeah, what people actually do and presenting that for the stage obviously can be an adaptation, but it's yeah, yeah, informed in that way.
absolutely.
Yeah, who's
Definitely.
running around their
Yeah.
living room with veils unless it's a
I mean, I guess you could.
there's room for arabesque turns all over your Oh, I love that. I love that. So, when you Yeah, I'm curious about like a movement that came, or a concept, or it could be a movement, a concept, or just a sort of technique that kind of came easily to you, whether in your belly dance phase or in your folkloric phase.
I think, and I can't really explain this,
I love
and I
this.
think that's, I don't, so I generally don't like saying it's in your blood. So, like, you have it or you don't. I generally don't like saying that. But I think there is a little truth to that.
Mhm.
Because when I first worked with drummers, even if I didn't know the name of a specific rhythm in my body, I knew what to do.
Yeah.
I just like kind of knew. And it was like, oh, this makes sense. That's it. This is, of course, this is what you do, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, some of the rhythms, like when I heard them when I was a kid and then I hear them on a drum, I'm like, oh, that's like Luxor Boledna, that's very Saidi. And that ended up being the name of the rhythm. So um, I think there can be this, oh, it's in your blood thing. Um, and I think the musicality came easier to me than because I know it is something that some dancers struggle with is musicality and hearing the rhythm, identifying the rhythm, and kind of thinking like planning out a choreography or even like a skeleton for improvisation of like I want to do this for this section of music when this rhythm plays. Um, I didn't really struggle with that. Um, I also don't I could be wrong in this one. I feel like I didn't really struggle, at least in belly dance world. Folklore, I think, is different. That I don't think you can improvise very well, especially if you have like a stick.
Hmm.
And you got to practice that one. I think there's little room for improvisation.
A little more at
Um,
risk, maybe physically.
yeah, more at risk for sure. I think improv came more natural to me. I know it can be a scary thing for people to just be like, I'm gonna wing it. We'll just see what happens, or I'm gonna feel as I feel. And I think because then I speak Arabic, so a lot of the music I understand it, and especially if it's an Egyptian singer, so I can kind of anticipate a little bit. Like I'm familiar with the music, like my ear is already kind of tuned to it.
Yes.
And so I can pick a song, of course, one that I know very well as well. It's not like a roulette and we'll see like what happens. Um, but like one that I know very well and I can kind of relatively quickly actually just frame it like, okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to step out of this section, improvise, do this here, step out. Like I like producing skeletons,
Yeah.
and like stepping in and stepping out a little bit to allow some creativity and freedom. Um, and I think that came easier for me. Um, and
Cool.
which made me really love, it also took a lot of pressure off because I think, at least for me, choreography is a challenge. Um, and having a skeleton of like, okay, let's plan out this section. You're struggling planning out this section. Let's just maybe play with it and then kind of not just like, oh, let's see what happens, but like, experiment more. Um, and that took the pressure off of, are you improv or are you choreo?
Mm.
And you're more in the middle. So yeah. And I think that was a
That's
concept that I really embraced. And it was great for anxiety, you
Oh,
know?
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, I know for myself, coming from like a ballet background, and not a big social dance growing up background, like choreography was much more comfortable for me at first. And that for
Yeah.
me personally has flipped entirely. Like you're saying now, finding that skeleton, experimenting, developing, and then allowing myself to just go is where I'm comfortable now. It is not where I was comfortable at the beginning. So that's really
Right.
fun to hear your
Yeah.
opposite experience on that. Yeah,
So,
it makes sense. Like if you grow up with this, if it's just kind of, like you said, in your blood, but like literally you're surrounded by this, you're absorbing it before you're analyzing it. And then when it comes time to analyze it, you're having a different experience than someone who didn't have that context.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's like, it's so strange because I think like, that phrase of it's in your blood, it kind of, I think it gives the impression of, oh, you either have it or you don't. You can
Oh,
work your
sure.
whole life, you could work your whole life as an American dancer and you'll never, never get it. I don't think that's true. I think there's just maybe more of a learning curve in a way because you're being exposed not from childhood, where you're just sitting there, as a 5 year old absorbing literally everything. This
Mhm.
is more of a learned behavior, a learned thing.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's something also that even um, just learning in general. So, like, one thing that I've kind of mentioned a little bit is how getting instructors that are native to the dance is very important. And so, if because like Egypt, for example, isn't the end all be all, like Saudi Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula, we have the Khaliji, the Levant, we have Depki, and Egyptians aren't really gonna, they might learn them, but they're not like of it. And I think that's just something not to be like, oh, I'm not teaching with this Egyptian instructor because he's not Lebanese. But I think it's just something to keep in mind that, you know, it's this is probably learned for this person and it's going to be a different experience from like, oh, I'm learning from an Egyptian who learned Palestinian Depki versus someone who's actually from Palestine and like grew up doing this since they were 5. So I think that it's just to keep that in mind and as always learn from as many people as you can. Absolutely. Like
100%.
everybody is going to teach you. If you walk away from a workshop with at least one thing that you're like, hey, I never knew this before, you already got your money's worth. So, yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you. That's my benchmark as well.
yeah, yeah. You just got to walk away with one thing to take home, practice. I've never heard that before. I've never done that before. I think that's worth it for
That makes
sure.
a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, choreography was something that was more challenging for you. Is that something that you have decided that you just don't choose to pursue? Is that something you wish to pursue? Tell me more on
That is
that front
something,
and how
yeah,
that
that is
fits
definitely,
or doesn't into I'm sorry, I was talking over you.
oh
Fits or
no, go
doesn't
for
into the
it.
folkloric phase of your life. Yeah.
I think it definitely, in a way, has to fit in some, and it's something that I embrace a lot more that I do the folklore. So I'm just going to use Asaya as an example. I mean, one, you're dancing with a prop. So depending on your comfort level, I mean, you could be a master instructor and maybe, yeah, I'm going to go wing it because every time I toss a cane, I catch it. Like, and it doesn't matter, but many of us, including myself, are not there. Like we all drop it at some point. And so I think in that aspect, that definitely has to be practiced for sure. And then also, one thing that I think, and this is something that I love to, I think when you take so um some there's a specific song by Mahmoud Al Laythi. It's a Saidi song, and it's very, in my mind, very powerful. As in like it's very hard hitting. It is the lyrics itself are very pride oriented about being Saidi. So other than the music itself, like having all these hard hits and being a very powerful song, um, the lyrics embody that too. So this is actually a song that I'm choreographing to, and the idea in this for this particular song, it's like all or nothing. You got to bring it all because to in my mind, like this is a very strong piece, so you have to be strong. And the way I see it is like if your choreography is strong, you don't think about it too much. You
Mm,
just it kind of goes because you've practiced so much that you can I mean, obviously when you're in the moment and you're dancing, you are still paying attention to what you're doing, but you could almost let it go a little bit so then the energy can start coming and you could really hit. Like, if there is like a guy in the song he's making like one like very loud boom noise or something, like you could make sure like, okay, I'm not just gonna tap my cane on the floor. I'm really gonna like bring it down. And I want there to be like I want it to be felt not just by me, but by the audience. So they
yeah.
can kind of see like, because that is kind of the embodiment of like what someone from the Sayed region is. It's a lot
Mm.
of strength and it's a lot of pride. So I think like when you choreograph and you practice and you're really comfortable in what you're doing, you can kind of let go a little bit instead of focusing like, oh, is it left foot or right foot? And you have stage face, where, you're not even
100%.
like, yeah, you just like stage face and sometimes like your arms like can do the like chicken wing thing. And you can focus more on, like I'm gonna bring it all. I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna give the audience everything I got. So I think
Yeah.
choreography is really important because now I think it's more because it's associated, in my mind, it's associated more strongly with a people and you want to represent the people as best as possible.
Mm.
So I think that is very important is the representation. You know,
You want to be able to think through how you're presenting in the choreography process and then embody
yeah,
that choreography and not make it feel like a choreography is what I'm kind of
yeah,
hearing.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, because I think also audiences, they can maybe it's me or maybe it could be the general audience. Sometimes you can kind of see nervousness or hesitation a little bit, especially in group. Group is hard. Group is hard for everybody. Like when you're performing in a troupe, that is hard. You absolutely have to practice, absolutely have to choreograph, and everybody, even when I was in a dance company, is like, oh my God, if I'm doing an arabesque with my left leg instead of my right leg, everyone's going to see it and everyone's going to know because everyone else is correct and I'm wrong. So I think there's a lot of pressure in that.
Mhm.
But as a soloist, I think, you know, being able to like just also know that nobody else knows your choreography.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
if you mess, because there's nobody else with you, you're a soloist, and the audience doesn't know, of course.
Right.
So if you do mess up, you know it, but is it really a mess up? Because no one knew from the beginning except for
Right.
you.
Only if the
Yeah.
audience knows it, in my opinion, is
Only
it
if
a
the
mess up.
audience knows it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Um, so in your like, in your dance explorations, I'm curious if you found anything that specifically relates to your non-dance life or improves it or makes certain things easier.
Yeah. I think coming back to dance has given me a lot of work life balance. So dance is not my primary job. I actually work for a university, and I work in public health research. So I love it. I absolutely love it. It's given me so many opportunities, like travel internationally and, work with like amazing academics, policymakers, things like that, for health advocacy. Um, it is a demanding job. And before I danced, before I stepped into, okay, we're gonna just folkloric dance artist, it's gonna happen. I was working like disgusting hours, like at like all hours of the night. I was, even if I wasn't actively working, I was always on, like you're always available. Whether it's like, hey, you can call me or you can email me, and my email's on my phone. And I never really disconnected
Mm,
from my job, because when I stopped dancing, um, it was like something that was mine was taken away from me.
mm,
And I remember there was one point I was like crying a lot because I felt like a piece of me was gone and stolen, essentially, that I can't dance anymore. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what? You might not have dance, but you'll always have your work, and your
mm.
work will always be there for you. And sadly, those were words that I said at many stages of my life. I've said those things at like, when I was like 12 or 17. It's like, you know what, you're just going to work, because nobody can take your education away from you. No one can take your work away from you. And you're just going to work because you lost dance. So you're just going to work. And I kind of took that very much to heart, but to the point it was detrimental.
Mm.
Like even my coworkers were like, Sherry, you don't take a vacation. Even if you set an away message, you're still checking email, you're still responding. Students call you, like, you're out of the country and you're working two time zones. Like, they're like, this is not good. Like, and they're like, nobody wants this for you.
Mhm.
So, and I didn't want it
It's
for
kind of
me.
incredible in a coworker to have them say
I know.
that.
I think it got to the point that they were horrified. Honestly, they're just like, oh my god, this girl's gonna collapse, like, and yeah, and it did impact my mental and physical health. You stop taking care of yourself, um, and you need those breaks, and you need those things that are part of that, you know, that fill your, as people say, like it fills your cup, like,
Very true.
as it's just like you need breaks, and you need to be rejuvenated in some way. And as much as I love my job and like everything that, comes with it, it's it's not dance. It's not the
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. So that really
So
pointed out how
definitely,
much dance is necessary for you. Yeah.
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Is there anything the other way around, things in your dance life that help with your non-dance life, with your work life or your just everyday?
Yeah, I think so because I work for so I've been in academic research for over 10 years now.
Wow.
So um I am very academic focused and research driven. Like, you need data, you need, like cited sources, reputable sources. That's how I think about folkloric dance, is that, you don't just, to me, like, when I create lectures for dancers, there's like, oh, I read this article that came out of University of California, Los Angeles, published by so and so. It's very like I take a very academic approach to it.
Mhm.
Um, Especially because, so one thing that I think is very important is accessibility to information.
Mm.
And a lot of universities, including mine, like these academic journals that like professors publish in, generally are not open access. Generally you have to pay a subscription fee, like yada yada. And that is not financially feasible for, many people. And sometimes it's just ridiculously expensive. Like if you want a textbook, that's like all about dance in like, Iran, but it costs like over $100. Are you really going to do it?
Mm.
Yeah. So a lot of these institutions, including mine, have institutional access. So one thing that I do, and I've done this for a lot of my friends here in Columbus, is I will do the background research. I will pull the papers, the books, anything that I have open access to, and I share it with them.
That's wonderful.
Because like, and some of these um, resources are like even integral to, you might think like, oh, it's just research paper kind of thing, but like some of them are so integral to our dance. Like one, and whenever I get the opportunity to talk about this one, I always talk about it because me and Safra Saida talk together about it. There is a dissertation, a PhD dissertation done by Magda Sala. She got her PhD from, yeah, NYU and 1979, and it's like a 600-page document on all the folkloric dances of Egypt, and it's open access to a university.
Oh, incredible.
So I have a copy because I have the open access. And things like that, and it's just like this is like, and Magda Sala unfortunately passed away a few years ago,
Yeah.
so it's like now the source, the writer, is no longer with us, so
Yeah.
but her document is still
Oh,
there, you know and I think like I've been reading through it and I'm just like, this is so incredible. Like more people should have access to it. And accessibility for me is such an important thing. Like removing barriers. Like I do this in my job. Like we try
mhm.
to remove barriers to healthcare, so it's like, why don't we try, as best as we can to remove barriers for workshops, knowledge gaps, anything that we can do to from just to like get some of this stuff out there. So yeah, a lot of my, I guess, public health research world really goes into my dance,
Oh, that's really neat.
especially yeah, especially the lectures. Like you got to back up what you say.
I love it. I love it. So we've spoken offline a little bit about you being a person of Saidi origins. When you see representations of the dance that don't resonate, um, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your reactions and what you choose to share on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think being an audience member and being a dancer and being uh for a lineage of Egypt and the Said region, and watching a Saidi performance that doesn't resonate, I think there's a lot there to unpack. Because you're an audience member, you're not going to give somebody the stink eye. I believe you should absolutely be respectful in every single way. Um, I sometimes I will say it hurts to watch. I will say that. I've definitely seen performances where I'm like, I'm sitting right here. You might not know it, but that's not me. And it hurts. Like these are things I've definitely cried about. And I
Mm,
think it's, especially when it's like, I know what, I know what I am. I know who I am. And I know what, and I say my people a lot, sometimes. So I'm like, I know what the Syed region is about because that's where I'm from. And it hurts, not just from a performance standpoint, but also from a teaching and monetary standpoint. Because let's be honest here, it's like, you're many people who perform also teach, and you're not generally not teaching for free. You're teaching for money. So sometimes it hurts because you're like, somebody is making money by misrepresenting me, and
Mm.
I'm not dancing, so there's nothing I can do about it. And you feel like, do I just sit here and take it? And that's how I felt in many ways, like, and it's not to call out anybody, it's just sometimes I think we, as the human race, as in general, I think under, especially like using folkloric dance is, I very much like, if you're going to do a dance that belongs to somebody else, definitely talk to a native first. Not like, if you can train with them, do it. If you can get them to review and like feedback on videos, do it. Because the goal is, they might have their own reasons for not dancing, especially women. Like, it's very different. The world is different for men in the Arab world, like they can dance and they can take theater and it's not a problem and they're like the greatest artists on the face of the earth. But for women, this is different, unfortunately. So, and I think, like, I've turned down gigs because somebody has asked for a dance that I am not, you know, well versed in.
Hmm.
Like, if somebody asked me, like, oh, could you perform like classical Persian, for example, which is very different from like the folkloric Persian, or can you perform something from like Azerbaijan, or something, which I've studied, but I wouldn't perform it for a gig, and I wouldn't teach it. And I've turned down gigs who have asked for that, not just from a skill level, but it's more of a representation level. Like, the money doesn't matter to me. I think it's like, you know, you want to honor the dance, you want to honor the people, and you want to honor and respect the hard work of other instructors, who are really trying to, like, you know, they're really trying to educate and know that what they put out there, somebody could be like, oh yeah, that's Persian. Absolutely, 100%. You know, like, or that's Bhangra. Yeah, 100%. And I think so that, and I have to remind myself, okay, Sherry or Maria, not everybody thinks like you, kind of thing, or like, this is a different perspective. But I think it's something needs that needs to be practiced a little bit, because it does hurt people. It does, whether they're vocal about it or not,
Hmm.
and it's very hard. And I will say this, from like as a dancer that stopped dancing,
Hmm.
it's hard to sit back and be silent, and just be like, okay, I guess, like, and you're not trying to like be mean or like, you know, tear anyone down, but like, it does kind of impact you in some way, you know? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
of
I
course,
think that's a
yeah,
really important thing for folks to understand. And I'm sure it takes a lot to say that as well.
yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a challenge. I know it's a challenging place to navigate. Um, because you could also, I've had people, again, like we were talking about, it's like, well, you're in America, you could do whatever you want, you could dance. And I'm just like, I can't, because there is this, because it's not about me, it's about the community. That's, this is goes back to that, I'm stuck between two very different cultures and I don't know what to do, kind of thing. So, there's definitely parts of me that I'm like, oh yeah, that's so American of me, and there's definitely parts of me that are like, okay, that's pretty Egyptian of me, like, and it's tough, like, I remember, like, my brother actually is married, and he married, actually, a girl from India who's Punjabi. And I remember, so in they had an engagement ceremony, the Sangeet. And this was like during COVID, so it was like at our house and very
Mm.
small. But so I remember like the day before, I was helping her, she was getting her henna done. And I've never been to a Sangeet before. So this was my first one, and I really didn't know how it was going to go. And literally the day before her Sangeet, she's like, oh, there's going to be dancing and it's going to be so much fun. And my blood ran cold. Like, I was just like, I can't do this. I can't do this.
Mm.
I cannot dance. I cannot dance because my
Mm.
parents are there, and and it's like, it goes back to this social acceptability thing.
Mhm.
And does your individuality matter more than the community and your family? And literally, I was like, I should probably not go. This is like my brother's wedding. Like, and it was, and I actually did dance with her, and it was terrifying. I will say that it was
Mm.
absolutely terrifying. And there was literally one point where it was just the two of us dancing. Like, everyone just kind of like circled around us and was like, "Oh my gosh, she knows what she's doing." Because like we were the
Oh.
only like I was, me and my family were the only non-Indian people there, and I knew what I was doing because I studied Bhangra. But at one point I stopped and I literally went to my parents and I was like, "Is this okay? Like,
Mm.
I can stop. I can stop. Like, is this embarrassing you? Is this causing a problem? I will stop." And you know, it was scary. It was so scary.
So you felt that
And
pressure even in that social setting, the at
oh
home,
yeah,
private. Hmm.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I think like, and so like that's a private, at home COVID event that was so small. So imagine scaling that up. And that's like, it's, this is where reputation and honor of your family, these things that we don't think about in an individualistic mindset, matter so much. And it is something that, yeah, a lot of first generation children of immigrants, they all struggle with it to some capacity. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. Sahra Saida had a story once about when she was American, for anyone who doesn't know, who um, lived in Egypt and was married to an Egyptian for a while, and she had a story about that individualistic mindset versus the group mindset. They were all getting ice cream, and she was like, "Oh, I'll have, I don't remember, a strawberry," and they were like, "Oh no, we're all having chocolate." And it was just this like such a small thing, but it was such a different mindset to this
Hmm.
this this group dynamic.
Yeah, yeah.
That just always stuck with me. That it really
It,
is
it's
a
so it's
yeah.
so funny because like that's how our holidays are. It's like, oh, we're all having chicken. like, like, okay,
Yeah,
I guess that's it. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. These are those things where it's like, the tip of the iceberg. What is culture? Costumes, like whatever, male, female
Mhm.
roles. And then that whole like below, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's definitely the under, there's the iceberg and then everything under it.
Yeah.
It's yeah, and yeah, it's very, and the software says this, it's complicated. It really is. It's very
Always.
complicated. Yeah. But I think coming in with like an open heart and like not, this is one thing that I also kind of a research mentality. I think remaining as objective as possible, just take it for what it is, you know,
Yeah.
be practice empathy and listening. Listen more than you ever talk. Always.
Perfect.
Always. Listen more than you ever talk, and I think, you know, people can say, even hurtful things to me, like, oh, you're being oppressed, or I'm like, one, that's an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
One, that's an opinion. Um, which is valid. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But I think it's important to look at situations as objectively as possible, and like, hey, this is the way things are. Whether I agree with it or not doesn't matter, but this is the way it is, and I have to try to understand it and, you know, be empathetic to, the other person,
Yes.
and, try to understand where even if it's hard to understand where the other person's coming from, definitely listen more than you talk. And I think that's like the big thing, too, is, it's not like, I'm very open about speaking about a lot of this stuff. And I'm not the only native that has went through struggles like this. I've definitely talked to like Afghan, Iraqi, like all these different dancers who have went through pretty much the same thing, you know? And yeah, like they're like, yeah, no video, no photos, like I'll perform, but like no proof of it, no social media, no nothing, because you're trying to protect yourself and keep, still dance, protect yourself, protect your privacy, but also kind of keep the social unwritten rules at bay, you know? So trying to keep, in a way, both happy and both
Yeah,
balanced as much as possible. Yeah. It's complicated and it's hard to navigate, but I think like it's an important thing to know that it is a reality for people. So
absolutely. I think it's also important for us to remember us being people from here learning about things from there, um, that we often come into this with preconceptions that we don't realize that we have. Like you said, if I was to say to you, you're being oppressed, that is not the concept that you're working with there. This is a concept that I have that I am putting onto that in if I was to say that. And learning to peel back those layers of the culture that you come from without realizing that those aren't just universal concepts is a really important part of, of the learning process. We
oh
have to learn
yeah.
a lot about ourselves while we learn a lot about the folks that we're trying to learn about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. These were, my first anthropology class in college was
I love it.
exactly that process for me.
I was an
Yeah.
anthropology major too. I know it's
Wow.
like, yeah. So that's actually how I take. And this is so funny. But this is a fun story and kind of how I actually approach like my daily life, um, when I go grocery shopping. So I one thing I remember one professor always talking about anthropology as, what does it teach you? And she would say, it just teaches you how to talk to people. It teaches you how to listen to people.
Yes.
And I've heard lots of people be like, you meet people where they're at, kind of thing. So one thing so I love to cook. Like I love it. Like especially international food, like not outside of the Middle East. Mom's cooking is always going to be amazing. So I'm not even gonna touch Egyptian food, and but like Ethiopian food or like Korean food. Like I've collected cookbooks in like many of for many of these countries, and so in Columbus we do have some Korean markets and some Asian markets. And there was one Korean market I went to. I didn't really know what I wanted to do at all. I just kind of went there, and the owner, her primary language is not English, and everything in the store was like all the products are the names are written in Korean. So of course I had no idea what I was even looking at. So kind of got a little intimidated, went home, and I was like, okay, so what do I ask? And I thought, I'm like, okay, what do I absolutely need to make Korean food? Like, what are the essential pantry items that every Korean household has to have? And I did like so much reading, so much like internet searching. I looked through cookbooks, and I was looking at some cookbooks have like, okay, this is how you build a Korean pantry, and they would have the names of the ingredients in transliteration in the English. So what I did was I took all those items, I on a piece of paper, like I just had like the Korean name, like actually written in Korean on one side, the transliteration on the other, so like I could maybe verbalize it if I needed to, and then like the English. And I just the next time I just like went to her and I'm like, hey, can you help me like find these things? And her face lit up,
Oh,
and she was like, how do you know this? Like that was like kind of her like, you how do you know this? And she just got so excited. She was like, this is my favorite brand of this. Oh, you want this one, to do this, or and she's like, what are you making? And I was like, oh, I want to make like Napa cabbage kimchi or something. Like I had a recipe in mind. And she was so excited that I took that time to learn about her without being prompted about
mm.
it. And I've done this I've done this at Ethiopian markets, and it's the same, everything's like written in Amharic, and I just take that same process, and I was like, oh, I think it's this, like, but I don't, but you tell me. I'm not going to tell you. The voice belongs to the other person. The voice does not belong to me, you know? So I think that's something really important. And what I absolutely loved about actually the Ethiopian market I went to, so there's a term in Amharic, Habisha. And Habisha is kind of like almost like sister, like you're of like the country. Um, and he's like, you're Habisha. And I was just like, yes.
Oh,
I'm like, I made it. And he's
that's
like,
so lovely.
he's like, you are so Habisha. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it's just like, it shows people that like, you want to know about them, and you're not there to tell the story. You're
Mm,
there to hear it. You're there to hear the story. And I think that's what's most important. So, yeah.
that's wonderful. That's thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. So you have coming up some stuff that you are organizing. We're emerging now into the greater dance
Yeah.
world. You have a vision, you have some offerings, you have some collaborations. Would you like to share?
Yeah. Absolutely. So when this is in person in it will be hosted in Dayton, Ohio, um, and by Bronwyn, Belly Dance by Bronwyn,
Oh, yay.
who's hosting me. So excited to see her. I will be teaching a lecture and workshop format of Roxa Lasaya, and we will also have a show later and that evening, where you can see like the full choreography that I will actually be teaching in the dance portion of the workshop. So that workshop is actually May 11th. And registration is actually open right now. So
Fantastic.
yeah, so I'm
This
very
is in
excited for it.
2024, just for anyone who's
Yes,
watching this in the far future.
yes, yes. And then I guess some projects. So, and this is kind of my academic background as well. So I work a lot on research grants. So I have grant writing experience, so and Columbus is very. We have some like art councils that are willing to fund, artists, whether they're visual performing, for different projects, or um, cultural festivals, things like that. They really want to foster, payment of local artists and
Wow.
community, and one of the things that I'm hoping one day will develop is a grant proposal to fund a cultural festival here in Columbus.
Oh, how exciting. We will be looking for that.
Yeah,
Yeah. What do you
absolutely.
envision for that?
So one thing that one of my, I guess where my kind of heart communities are, so Columbus actually has a big refugee and immigrant population, and we
Oh,
actually have an organization that helps with new refugees and immigrants. And, I've volunteered with this organization before, and, they're just absolutely wonderful. And I think one thing that I've always wanted to do, and I do this a lot, again, with like the anthropology mindset, I guess, is doing things for people that aren't always, in the spotlight. So like I'm just this one example. So I actually craft a lot as well. So
cool.
like I make like door wreaths and things like that. But like and when I first started out, oh, here's a tulip wreath, your standard spring or Christmas wreath. But then I started getting really creative and was like, I want to make something super unique, super personal, that you can't find in a store,
Mm.
like ever, ever, ever. And Ramadan was actually coming up. This was a couple years ago. Yeah. So I made these metal wreaths that have flowers as the crescent moon. And there's actually a lantern on the other side that lights up. And oh my gosh, like even to this, I made them 2 years ago. And a lot of people who have seen them on, like social media, they're like, when are you going to do these again?
Oh, wow.
It's so, and I've, gifted some of these, to friends who are celebrating Ramadan. And it's just like, it's different because you can't walk into a store and find something like that. And, and so that's always something that was really important to me is like, you know, I think just we're all human. We're all trying to do this world thing together. Like, we're all trying to do it, somehow, you know, and I think it's just important to like highlight like Columbus's diversity and really give a platform for, you know, for people to speak and like show who they are,
Mhm.
not me as like being the voice, the voice. And we talk about this a lot in like my work, my day job too. It's like the voice and the advocacy comes from the people, not from you. Yeah,
Oh, I love that. May I ask you one more thing?
of course.
I'm curious about your relationship to Ramadan as someone from a Coptic background.
Yeah, I get this question a lot, actually.
Yeah,
Which is
okay.
so funny because actually I also practice Arabic calligraphy, which does not exist in Coptic
Oh,
Christianity. We don't
oh,
have it.
I
This
didn't
is
know that.
yes.
I would
So
love to
the
learn choreography, calligraphy.
it's so beautiful, and it's very much tied to Islam and the Quran. A lot of the calligraphy script and are verses from the Quran. And for me, it's more of also like this is important to someone, and I have a lot of Muslim friends, um, and it like it always mattered to me. It never mattered, from like where you're from, you know, what you believe in. None of that ever mattered to me. Like just, being a good person and being a human being, I think is most important.
Yeah.
And that's just like my life philosophy. And, I think like it's always important for me, it was very important to just do something. I just see it as I'm doing something nice for you, like, and if I am going to do something for Ramadan because it's important to you and you celebrate it, I'm going to do it right.
Yeah.
and like, so actually, like, when I make stuff like this, I actually like I like make videos and I talk through everything I'm gonna do. I like go back and forth with like consultations and stuff like that. Like, so it feels very professional. Like, and almost like a custom order in a way, but it's a gift, and or like, when my friends who fast, like, I know this happened a lot in college, like at the time when I was in college, the dining hall would open, but not at, you know, not when it's dark,
Right.
and it would close when the sun is still out. So,
Hmm.
so a lot of my friends who were Muslim couldn't go to the dining hall and they wouldn't have, you know, it definitely changed. We have progressed beyond that, thankfully.
That's
But
good to
like,
hear.
I know, like, I'm thankful we progressed, but
Not
like
here is
things like
dark.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like the last thing, I know for me, like I just think about, I try to think about the other person. I'm like, okay, if I was fasting for like the whole day, do I really want to cook when I'm done? Like, no.
Mm,
The answer is
mm,
no.
mm.
So like, even just like, oh, do you have stuff for suhoor or iftar? Like, do you need something? Like, what can make this easier for you? Because
Yeah.
I think that's just, and that for me is just a human philosophy. I think it goes beyond dance and, my day job and everything. So, like, even for Nowruz is going to be coming up. So I'm like, oh, I want to do something for like my Persian friends. So, kind of thing like that. So, I think yeah, I just think celebrating the things that aren't in the spotlight, and individuality is very important.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. This has
Absolutely.
been absolutely delightful, Maria. Thank you. Is there
Thank you.
anything we haven't touched on that you would like to say or bring up or offer or
Yeah, no, no, thank you so much for having me. It's so good to just reconnect and, just talk
likewise?
about, everything that we've talked about. This has been such a lovely time, and I'm so happy that we've done this. Yeah.
Likewise. Oh, thank you. I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and folks, we will share this with you. All right. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.